Good morning, everybody. Before we begin and kick off our meeting, I would like to ask our interpreter to introduce themselves and go over the process and procedures before we kick off the meeting.
Good morning. Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app from a cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish flow in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer el uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, donde está el globo terráqueo, y seleccione español. Si está utilizando la aplicación de Zoom desde su celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to the June 13th, 2024 Mobility Working Group meeting. I'm Councilmember Jose Rodriguez, and we'll be chairing the meeting today. Before we begin, I would like to check in with Tessa, our clerk, to confirm that we have quorum.
Good morning, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Tessa. And just as a little information, any working group members, anytime you would like to speak, you could simply raise your hand. Any members from the public that would like to speak in person, please turn in a speaker slip. And any individuals online, you can raise your hand in the online link, and the clerk will call upon you. So moving on to item number 1, it is public comments and communication. We do have update on the Mobility Working Group plan by Jennifer Williamson.
Good morning, everyone. Jennifer Williamson. I'm your staff person for the Mobility Working Group. If you recall, at the beginning of the year, there was a desire to revisit the work plan for this working group. And I had indicated that we'd be coming back with that schedule and that we were going to do a broader review with the other working groups. Well, there's been a decision to do a more targeted and focused approach to the working groups and really look at the governance structure here at SANDAG, working with our board chair. So over the course of the next 6 months, you're going to have some focus groups. We're going to be doing interviews, individual interviews, and then there's going to be a broader analysis of the reporting requirements, essentially how each working group rolls up into the appropriate pack and then the board. So what's happening right now is that we are bringing on a consultant to work with all of the working groups at SANDAG, and we'll be working with the board chair over the remainder of the calendar year to kind of kick off all the interviews and focus groups. You'll be contacted individually. And then the new work plan and new reporting structure will kick off as part of the the calendar year 2025 Board of Directors. So that's essentially to say, I'm not going to be coming back to you until the first of the year next year with a kind of a new reporting plan work structure. We'll have some reports along the way, probably towards the end of fall as we have more information. But for now, we're going to go ahead and use the work plan that we have through the remainder of this year. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Do we have any questions from committee members, comments? Yes.
Hi, good morning. Just a quick question. Will this also, you mentioned working groups. Does this also include the military working group?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right. Do we have any?
Chair, one question.
Yes.
Most Samak, City of Solana Beach. Jennifer, could you elaborate a little bit more about the focus groups? What are we targeting? And at least at this level, are you guys considering specific type of focus groups or specific topics for these focus groups?
Yeah, so we're working right now with the consultant to kind of outline what that will look like. My understanding is that the focus groups will take different folks from different working groups and really establish what the members are looking for, and then what how they'll be rolling up in terms of governance structure to the PACs or to the board of directors. So the focus groups right now will be a combination of different people from different areas, different working groups, just across our span of working groups here at SANDAG.
Okay. Has the consultant been selected?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Yes.
Yeah, Nathan Schmidt, City of Carlsbad. Just wondering if you could maybe further elaborate also on kind of the expectations for the review of the regional plan and how that may be coming before this committee.
Yeah, so the regional plan was part of this work plan that we have in place right now. So you'll be getting updates as it gets rolled out. We have a June 28th board meeting where we'll unveil the network. And after that, you'll get a presentation to give more input at a probably not August. We don't have an August meeting, but in September, you'll have a chance to really get in and dig deep with a presentation on the regional plan.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? No? Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Thank you, Chair. I have two public comments, the original draw and Thomas's iPhone. The original draw, please go ahead.
It's interesting to talk about social equity and whatnot, especially when you guys have, you're only giving a minute, took forever to really decide what equity means. And there's a different definition for the public and for the employees. So in that, there is no equity. And when there is a new protected class that is coming into the United States, which are people who are crossing the border illegally and getting benefits that the public themselves don't get, but have to pay for these individuals, it should be something that is a concern to you, because they are our replacements. They are going to be getting all of the benefits that, and they already are, that the people themselves have been begging and pleading for years, and it doesn't come to be. But the fact that you don't even know what social equity is, and in your definition, it's two different definitions for the public and for your employees, that just shows that you shouldn't be even dealing with equity when in your own definition, it's inequitable. And so it's just sad to see that we can't even be consistent with that across the board.
Our next commenter, Thomas's iPhone, please go ahead. You are self-muted. Okay, Chair, they're not responding, so we are done with public comments at this time.
Thank you. So moving on to consent, we do have the approval of the meeting minutes. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Thank you. I have one public commenter on this item, the original draw. Please go ahead.
Yeah, in the last minutes, you were talking about incentivizing for the electric vehicles and zero energy emissions and whatnot. When there is no infrastructure around that would these people would be able to use to make sure that if they do get an electric vehicle, that you incentivize them to get, that it doesn't make sense, because it's going to hinder people's movements. Unless you had all of that infrastructure in place, then you could start incentivizing people to get that kind of vehicle or transportation. But it's negligent to do when there isn't even the opportunity for them to go wherever they want and have it, like there's gas stations everywhere. People have reach anxiety just from driving these vehicles, which doctors are giving them anxiety medication because they are terrified that they're not going to make it to the next charging station. So to incentivize people into, basically getting that type of anxiety, it would behoove you to wait until there's actually infrastructure to do that.
And I do have one more hand that was just raised for public comment on the minutes. Tom Frank, please go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Tom Frank, please go ahead. Again, Chair, he's not responsive, so we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from committee group members? If not, I would like to entertain a motion for approval of consent.
I'll push that motion forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Seabury. Yes. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Hussain from City of Vista. All in favor, signify by just raising your hands. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. All right, motion passes. Moving on to item number 3. We will now hear from the Principal Research Analyst, Grace Minow, and Associate Data Analyst, Connor Vaughan, on the SANDAG Passenger Counting Program Update, the Transit Ridership Dashboard.
Good morning, Mobility Working Group members. My name is Grace Nino. I'm Principal Research Analyst here at SANDAG, and I'm pleased to also introduce my colleague, Connor Vaz, who's an Associate Data Scientist here. And we are going to be presenting the Transit Ridership Dashboard. And we just wanted to say this couldn't have been possible without a grant that we received from Caltrans. So we just want to give them our much appreciation and gratitude. And so I'll let Connor jump in.
Thank you, Grace. And I'll also continue the thank yous to both MTS and NCTD. Their participation in this project has been essential to making this a success so far. And so the group of organizations here that you see on the screen have been actively trying to make our passenger counting program better through this project. And so we'll be touching a little bit on that today. This is discussion, so hopefully feel free to any thoughts that you have on the project. We have a kind of a list of questions that we'll be asking for some input from this group for, but I also want to say thank you again for having this special session because we're very excited to be able to broach this topic with you all. So a little bit about our presentation today. We'll go over a little bit of a background of our passenger counting program. I may refer to it as PCP. That's just the way that we refer to this project as. And I'll try to go over as many acronyms as possible because it does get a little bit dense. We'll go over a little bit of the project as far as kind of some updates on where we're at. We'll discuss a little bit of the remaining timeline for the project, and we'll also show you a screenshot of a prototype that has been developed. We have had successive prototypes based on some feedback that we've received from some of our other outreach efforts. So unfortunately, no live demo. I know our production team's very disappointed about that, but we'll hopefully be able to get a kind of a appetite starter with just some screenshots. And then we'll lastly end this with a little bit of discussion, and I'm happy to answer any questions and also provide a little bit of feedback regarding any of those questions that y'all have. So a little bit of background. So the passenger counting program at SANDAG, we've been doing this since about 2007 in its kind of modern iteration of it. We collect data from our automated passenger counters. So we refer to those as APCs. These are the sensors on all of the transit vehicles in the transit system in San Diego County. And so anytime anything gets on or off a vehicle, the sensor counts that as someone either boarding or alighting a vehicle. And so this is a way that we collect transit ridership data. Other forms are such as fare box data are often good at kind of supplementing the information that we receive from our passenger counters. But this is really kind of a great way to get some ground truth on how many people are actually getting on and off our transit vehicles. And so we're the central clearinghouse. So we serve as basically the main repository for both MTS and NCTD's APC data. And so it's a collaborative effort between our 3 organizations to make sure that we're accurately accounting for overall ridership in our region. And as Grace mentioned, we were awarded a Caltrans planning grant to help improve our passenger counting program this year. And as a part of this passenger counting program, it's basically kind of two kind of simultaneous efforts. One is to improve our backend software that we use for generating the ridership summaries. And then this next piece is actually going to be what we're presenting to you today. And this is a kind of one of its kind, new to this region dashboard that will be open to the public and will be able to give more people access to the information as opposed to having to request it directly from us. And so this is something that other regions in the country and other areas around the world have similar types of dashboards. And so this will be new to this region, but not a new product. This is something that does exist. And so we have been researching those other products that are available and then using that to help inform some of the decisions that we've made so far. So a little bit of an update on this project. I want to say a big thank you to UTA, Urban Transportation Associates, and ESRI, who have both been awarded this contract to help us update our program. And so they were selected as part of a competitive process to help revitalize our passenger counting program and also develop our public-facing dashboard. We've been basically kicking off in earnest this project since December of last year, and we've been having weekly meetings along with many working sessions as well as some outreach sessions since then. And so we've really been hitting the ground running, and I'm happy to say that we are on schedule with all of our project deliverables. So as a part of that, our consultants have conducted evaluations. They've gone through the lengthy process of receiving the data as well as actually evaluating it, processing it, and visualizing it. As I mentioned, there's kind of two kind of simultaneous efforts. One is to update our backend software, and then the other one is to develop the public-facing dashboard. Both of those things our consultants are currently in the thick of, and so we are right on schedule, as I mentioned, with these two processes. And so we've developed a reporting tool to replace our current passenger counting software, and we've actually begun some training sessions with the transit operations staff to learn how to use this, how we're able to generate reports with this new tool similar to how we would with our old tool, and also go over some of the improvements and the new ways that we're able to generate reports. And then lastly, as I mentioned, we've developed actually a couple of draft dashboards since the inception of this project, and we'll be showing you one of those versions today just to kind of give you an idea of the direction that we're going in. So a little bit of the project remaining, or the remaining timeline for this project. This month, we're looking to pretty much wrap up some of the outreach. I believe we may be going to another outreach session next month, but we have been meeting with some community-based organizations as well as some working groups to solicit some feedback as far as what the priorities are for this project and some things that may be convenient to some of the members of the groups and some of their constituents that can really maximize the utility of this tool that we'll be developing. We've also begun to finalize the requirements. And so based on the feedback that we receive here today, we're looking to wrap that into some of the development decisions that we'll be making for this project. We're going to be implementing this feedback, like I said, this month, and we'll be continuing with the validation process to get official sign off from our transit operators that we're happy with the estimates that we're receiving from this new tool. And then in July, we'll be making the complete transition over from our old passenger counting program to our new version. In August and September, we're going to be looking to provide some updates to this group and other groups that we've conducted outreach to, so that way we can provide you with an update as how your feedback was implemented into the project. And then we are also going to be offering an opportunity to present this project, the public-facing dashboard, to boards of directors at our transit operators. In October, we're looking to launch this dashboard publicly, and then in the future, we'll be making constant updates to the dashboard, and so it'll constantly be refreshed with new data as we receive it. And here is a screenshot of one of the prototypes that was developed. And so there's a lot going on here. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you have, but I would say don't get too attached to anything that you see here on the screen, because the newest prototype looks quite a bit different kind of format wise, but there are some key features of this that I do want to get some feedback on here today. And so I'll kind of highlight a little bit about what's going on here. This, as I mentioned, is going to be a public facing dashboard. And so when you think about what it means to develop something for the public, you have to kind of understand the different audiences that kind of are are under that umbrella of what it means to be public. And so really the goal of this dashboard is to provide utility to both kind of casual consumers of information for this topic, as well as providing something that will be useful for partner agency staff, so people who are actually doing the work. So planners here at SANDAG can use this as a tool that they can check daily, weekly, however often that they need to, but as well, someone who's moving into a new neighborhood and they want to know how busy the buses are in their area for their commute. Someone should be able, with little experience, to be able to navigate a dashboard and find out what's the busiest times for buses in their area. And so trying to make something that is easy to access for everybody, but also provides the enough information for people who need this for research purposes to be able to access the information that they need. And so there's a couple of things here that I'll highlight. There's in the middle of the screen there's some high total averages for selected route. You'll see some kind of what we call some highlight numbers with boardings at 3,000 per day, alightings 2,000 per day, and load at 13 at any moment. So that's kind of what we would call just a highlight card. That's basically some overall summary level information. On the right, on the upper right-hand corner, or the map on the right corner, you'll see a route. This one specifically that's selected is the 3, and that shows you all of the stops along the 3 going in both directions. And so that gives you kind of a general idea of where this route goes. You'll see on the far left-hand side, there's average boardings per trip. And so this is a vertical bar chart that shows each trip and shows you how many boardings on average on a given day people are riding on that specific trip. On the bottom, you'll see a horizontal line chart, and this is showing you the average load for this given route and on this given trip. And so it's showing you basically how full a given bus is on a given trip and at which stops and at which points it's busiest. And then on the far right, you'll see some stop details. And so this is specific to a given stop, and you'll see it says 1 of 15. So people are able to scroll through or even select individual stops to find some information related to that. And so these are kind of some general this is the landscape that we're kind of working with as far as what's possible inside of a public facing dashboard. There's still quite a bit more. As you can see, there's some other tabs right below there that are offering more information. And so the things that I really wanted to discuss here today are going to be these filters and then this kind of base map. And so I'll get into a little bit about that before we get into some kind of predefined questions for you all to consider. But what really makes this dashboard very useful is the ability to take a large amount of data and cut it up to a specific way that makes it useful to your personal needs. And so right now we have some filters. We have filters by agency, by route, by day of week, and then by direction. And so using those filters, you're able to make selections to look at data in a given way for a specific route, for a specific time of day, specific direction, or even kind of system-wide for a given transit operator. And so we've started with these. We've actually developed a few more based on some feedback that we've received from other outreach efforts and from other working groups and community-based organizations. And so we've added things like new geographies, such as census block or census tract. We've added other predefined kind of groupings of routes, such as transnet routes. We've also added mid-coast routes. And so that is kind of predefined options to allow users to make a simple click of a button and be able to see a predefined kind of bookmarked view of ridership information in our region. And so that's one thing that I'd like for us all to consider here today. The other one is this map. And so with our mapping capabilities, we're able to add things to this map to help kind of add some context to the region that you're drilling down into. So that could be something like some type of social equity score. This could be something related to the demographics of the region. And so one thing that is beneficial about this is that one thing that you don't get from the automated passenger counters is anything specific to the individuals who are boarding and getting off of these vehicles. So it doesn't collect any information about how much an individual makes in a given year. It doesn't collect information about how many vehicles that a person has in their household. And so what we're able to do with this map is to hopefully provide some context to what that area looks like demographically, since we're not able to collect that information from the automated passenger counters. And so we've kind of come up with some discussion questions here for you all today. But like I said, this is we're very open to any feedback that you all have about whether it's priorities that you would have for yourselves or for your constituents. We also would definitely welcome any thoughts that we could at least explore. I can't make any promises that we're able to address every single option that you all may have for us here today, but we're definitely going to make the effort to consider everything that you have. And so really, we're looking for feedback from yourselves as far as what kind of filters you'd like, whether you'd like to be able to filter by some type of geographic area or some type of route classification or even time periods. And then we'd also like to know what type of kind of supplemental information could we put into this dashboard that would make it useful or maybe provide that kind of context that is missing from just kind of cut and dry ridership information that comes from our APCs. And so I'm going to pause there, and then I'd love to open it up for some questions or some feedback from this group. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I do see a couple of hands up. Please, I'm sorry, can you identify yourself and
Roy Bood with Caltrans. Just a quick question. I'm just wondering, is there a capability to like enter in events? If there's an incident, a detour for a route, like if a trolley closure, for example, or construction that are detouring the routes, also special events such as baseball games or special events like that that might impact those numbers, so that it gives a fair view of those events and also the regular usage of the transit.
Thank you very much. That's some great feedback, and we can definitely explore how we might be able to include that type of context. One piece to this dashboard is that this is not going to be a live dashboard. So this is going to be, we're still trying to decide with the file size and what our storage options are, what the cadence is going to be that we're going to update this dashboard with. Right now, we're playing around with either weekly or monthly likely. And so, yeah, that's definitely something that we could consider. I'm thinking, at least for starters, one thing that could possibly be is, instead of maybe the stop details portion, we could have an option to show some type of event details, like you mentioned, to add a little bit of context to what we're viewing. So that's definitely something we can explore. Thank you.
we have a couple hands up here. Ms. Madden?
Yes. Thank you. Great presentation. For context, I used to work here at SANDAG, and I used to work on the passenger counting program. So really, really excited to see how this program's evolving. One thing I wanted to mention for time periods is maybe to look at schedule periods for the transit operators. Like, for example, I know MTS, they'll have a service change every summer and add more service on like the beach routes. And so being able to filter like that would probably be really beneficial. Really, really excited to see this information, though. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. We can absolutely explore that.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, Heather Warner, City of San Diego. One of the things that would be useful for filtering is special events. So being able to see what the difference is, say, when there's a Padres game versus not, or be able to filter out a Padres game so that you're seeing base load versus special event load.
Absolutely. Thank you. We can explore that.
Additional questions? Yes, here.
Nathan Schmidt, City of Carlsbad. So just a few questions first. Does this include, this would include the entire region, so it includes MTS, NCTD, other operators, because I know that's been an issue, but this will consolidate all those data sources into this single dashboard, right?
That's correct. So MTS and NCTD both have fleets that are mostly equipped with APCs, and so there's some smaller service areas that may not include APCs, but if it has an APC and it's providing us data, then it'll be included in this dashboard.
Okay, that's great to hear. That's been something that we've been wanting to see for a while. And then just in terms of the data itself, from a local agency perspective, we really like to see that data in its granular availability as you can. So like at the stop level, we really like to see, like I saw on the dashboard, you had boardings and alightings by the stop level. That's very useful for us, for one, to understand how people are using transit in our local agencies. We need that level of detail. But then also in terms of other planning activities, so planning infrastructure, planning development projects, looking at areas where transit use is high or where it may be low, where we can then plan accordingly. So really look forward to seeing this dashboard. It's something that I know we will use at the City of Carlsbad a lot for multiple reasons. So look forward to this. And I guess one other thought is the historic data is also useful as well, so we can uncover trends in the data and see, you know, how transit use has evolved over the past few years as well.
Thank you. And I can actually mention just a little bit of a kind of some next steps that we've already taken as a part of this project. To your point about looking at stop level information, the newest prototype of the dashboard has 2 pages. And so that first page is going to be looking at route level data. And then that second page is going to be looking at stop level data. And so you'll be able to run specific queries of this data at a given stop, for example. And so that's one thing that we have definitely addressed as far as getting really granular with this information. And then the other one is the historical data. Right now, we're actually looking at incorporating the previous 10 years worth of data. And so it's going to be kind of an ongoing process. And so we're going to be working with our consultants to process that historical data that we have. And so right now, we are looking to make sure that that's included in this dashboard. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember Seabury.
Thank you for all the data collection that you've done and that you will continue to do. But what about lack of ridership? We in Imperial Beach, we have a rapid transit coming through there with no riders on it. So will they reduce buses coming through because they come like every 10, 15 minutes and no one's on them? And people are noticing that, and so they're calling it the ghost bus all the time because there's no ridership. Will they lower the amount of buses, or can they not because it's a rapid route? I don't know, but you would think they're not making money on it, so they would lessen the number of routes.
Yeah, so with this dashboard, this is a tool that local agencies and general members of the public will be able to use to view information. But the goal of this dashboard is to be informative. So we're not making conclusions in one direction or the other as far as kind of what next steps are based on the information that's provided. And so the dashboard is going to be a tool to, for example, address questions that you have related to ridership. And so you'll be able to use this to understand what the conditions are in a given area, for example, like your region. And so that's not a tool that, or I guess that's not a conclusion that this dashboard is explicitly going to look to be making. It's just going to be looking to provide this information to everybody.
Yeah, and if I could, I'm sorry, I could just add, I'm the Deputy Director of Mobility. So what will happen here is that in terms of MTS, they will have the responsibility for making any operational changes. What Connor is telling you is about a tool, but MTS can use that tool to then facilitate operating changes. I would also just mention that the rapid route that you're talking about was just implemented. So very likely MTS is going to want to implement it for a while to ensure that ridership, it takes a long time for ridership to grow on a route. So you have to allow the service to build over time. So I would just work with MTS on any kind of service revisions that they might have planned. But again, you have to remember that they need to give it time to build ridership. It doesn't come immediately. Generally, it takes about a year for a rapid route to mature. Yeah.
We have additional questions? Yes.
Hey, Connor, thanks for the great presentation. I was kind of curious, the dashboard that I know it's just an example or one of the several that you have, but it looks more of like a back end sort of reporting tool. Is the public sort of interface going to be something a little more spruced up? Just because I'm thinking of like, the folks that I interact with, sometimes they're not always like, yeah, if you're pulling data, got it. That's kind of the look and feel, but it doesn't have this like, I'm a member of the public, I'm trying to get from point A to point B. Is there some sort of like user-friendly sort of dashboard or like interface?
Yes, absolutely. And you bring up a great point. This is a very rough draft. This was just getting something thrown in on some paper, so to speak. But yeah, so one of the kind of, as a part of the next steps for this project, one of those is going to be improving that interface. As a part of the improvements to the interface, it's going to be making it visually easier to navigate, getting it a little bit less cluttered. And a part of that is also going to be adding some resources for users. And so a part of that is going to be a lot of pages you see kind of like a question mark in the upper right right-hand corner, you'll be able to click on that and then view kind of a glossary of terms. You'll be able to see definitions associated with information on the dashboard. We're going to be able to provide some context there as well as some recorded material to be able to help users navigate that. And we've actually done that with a couple other projects that we publish on our open data portal, where we are showing users how to actually, like doing a screen recording, how to navigate with kind of use case examples, so that people who maybe aren't super familiar with either even the internet, for example, who stumble in there will be able to navigate to what it is that they're looking for.
And then ultimately, is it also going to be like an app on your phone?
So this will be accessible on your phone. With the amount of information that's on there, we're going to be working with our consultants to be able to try to find the best way to make this mobile compatible. But that's definitely something that we can explore as well, making sure that that's a priority.
Perfect. And then the second question was just like, I didn't see in the filters the trip type, just in terms of like, is it for commercial purposes or employment purposes? If that isn't included, that'd be great to have that.
Thank you. And I can actually address that. And trip purpose isn't going to be something that we're going to be able to capture with our automated passenger counters, because we really don't know with a person who's getting on or off a vehicle what it is that their purpose is. But we actually do have some reports out there that do capture kind of mode choice as well as some kind of trip purpose information. And that will be coming out with our onboard survey results, which will be coming out later this year. No problem.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Williamson.
Hi, Connor. So I know that you have the historical data, and I think that that's super important. I'm wondering, will the dashboard have the ability to do calculation year over year so we can see that difference, or will it just report out, you know, kind of a table of year over year and we do our own calculations? I just know that that's something that we really look to do to see what the change is. That's an important metric for us.
Mm-hmm. So that's definitely something that we can explore, including in the public-facing dashboard. I know on the back-end reporting, we'd definitely be able to do that kind of calculation. So staff at both the transit operators and SANDAG will be able to conduct that. But we can definitely explore trying to find a way that we could do something like that in the dashboard.
Thank you. Yes, we have Mr. I'm sorry, from Escondido, and then Mr. Manganiello from National City. Yeah.
Jonathan Schaubel, City of Escondido. Hey, great presentation, Connor. This is a really exciting program. I didn't notice any cost information. Just curious what a program like this costs to implement and then maintain over the future?
That's a great question. Grace, are we...
Off the top of my head, we received a Caltrans planning grant for $350,000. There's an initial startup cost, and then there's an annual cost after that. We can get back to you with that cost so you can see the breakdown.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Manganiello, National City. Kind of following up on what Jennifer's comment, will local agencies have access to this historic data?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Tamtrans, City of Oceanside. So one question is micromobility. Would this system, platform, or dashboard be integrated to micromobility or first mile, last mile as well?
So that's a great question. This dashboard right now is currently going to be pulling from a single data source for ridership, and that's going to be our automated passenger counters. And so typically, I don't believe that we have automated passenger counters on the most micromobility options. That is some feedback that we actually received from some of our previous outreach. And so we're currently exploring options on how we might be able to incorporate that type of data in addition to potentially farebox data into this dashboard. As of now, we haven't found a great way of doing that, but it is something that we're going to explore.
So if agency have those type of data, would you be interested in, receiving these data from agencies?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have anything that you'd like us to consider finding a way to incorporate, we could definitely explore that.
And if I can chime in, I'm sorry, I keep chiming in today. We do have an open data portal for the microtransit flexible fleet service on SANDAG right now. So we have the SANDAG sponsored flexible fleet programs, PB Bug, I think Oceanside is even on there. So we can work with the different jurisdictions to add additional data. It's not incorporated here, but we do have a similar type dashboard for the type micro mobility.
Thank you also. Yes, I got two more questions over here. Miss, I'm sorry, can you,
Good morning, Tara Libreng, County of San Diego. Thank you again for the presentation. I'm wondering if the passenger counter has the ability to identify length of trip, or if that's something that would be identified through a survey, in addition to how many connections people are making between different modes of transit.
So yes, and that is something that we're going to be exploring on incorporating into this dashboard. A couple of metrics related to trip length, one of those being passenger miles, and then the other being average trip length. And so we're going to figure out kind of where that lives, whether it be in the route level or in the stop level information, but that's going to be something we're exploring.
yes.
Larry Renteria with MTS. Connor, we've been working together for a while now, so I'm familiar with everything that's going on. I wanted to, for the group, ask what happens when an ABC is faulty and we get, 9,000 rides because it's faulty and it's automatically clicking. So what's the process for vetting that type of information?
Thank you, Larry. And so that question is great because one of the real benefits of kind of this transition over to our new and improved passenger counting program is that we're with the really high quality APCs that both transit operators have on their fleet of vehicles, we're able to get a extremely good survey coverage rate. And so what that basically means is that we're able to get a statistically significant sample from all of our different routes, all of our different trips in the region. And so we can, with a high degree of confidence, provide estimates for a given trip on a given route, even on a given day. And so with that information, if there is an APC that's giving faulty information, we're able to discard information that we decide is either suspicious or potentially faulty, and then supplement that with other data that is covered. Because we have such a high rate of coverage in our region, a single APC giving us bad data would not impact the quality of our estimates.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? No, thank you. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Thank you, Chair. I have two public commenters. The original draw, please go ahead.
So I'd like to know how much the grant is for, if somebody could make that known. And then you should have filters, especially for shows or events or different things like that, because it will skew the data. But you also should understand that when you have people who cross the border illegally being dropped off at Iris Transit Center in massive droves, and potentially hundreds of thousands of people have been going through there that are not people that ride on a regular basis, it will skew the data. So I think you need to take that into account as well, because otherwise you're not going to have accurate numbers, because it's not just people from the public going down there and riding on a massive scale. So, and also I don't think that you need to be adding demographics, economics, or environmental to that, because the more data you collect on people, it's just going to be used against them. So I don't think that that's a road you should go down, because what difference does that make, how much money someone makes and all of that? It's just collecting data on people that isn't necessary.
And we're going to try Thomas's iPhone one more time. Please go ahead. You are self-muted. And I just want to let you know, we are unable to have you connect, but if you would like to email your comments on any of the agenda items to clerk@sandag.org, we will make sure that the members of the Mobility Working Group get your comments. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you so much. Very informational item. Thank you again for all the good work. This was only a discussion item, so moving on to item number 4. We have a presentation by Caitlin McCauley from, she's our SANDAG Senior Regional Planner, and she's going to provide an update on the advanced air mobility.
Good morning, Mobility Working Group. Thank you for having me today. My name is Kate McCauley. I'm on our Strategic Partnerships team here at SANDAG, and I'm going to present to you today on advanced air mobility. I do want to caveat this by saying this is a fairly technical program, so please feel free to jump in with any questions if you should have any. So what is advanced air mobility? Advanced air mobility is an overarching term for an emerging market in the aerospace aviation industry. It's using novel technology that explores alternative fueling mechanisms in order to deliver services such as freight, emergency, healthcare, or people movement. Again, this is an overarching term. We have regional air mobility, which is exploring more of air transport connecting to city. So let's say San Diego up to LA or LA up to San Francisco. So more intercity. My apologies. More intercity. So no, I'm sorry, this is incorrect. The top one is incorrect. So we're talking actually about 160 miles of capability today under regional air mobility. So what we would be talking about is LA to San Francisco, San Diego to LA, et cetera, et cetera. So we'd be using these novel technologies via whether they're electric or in the future, maybe hydrogen is another thing being explored to power these aviation vehicles. So again, the ranges will continue to expand, but for today, that's regional air mobility. Urban air mobility is something that you're actually seeing in this here photo in New York City. This is Joby flying their electric vertical takeoff landing aircraft right in the urban corridor of New York City. So you can see that there are several different use cases that are being explored under this umbrella. Additionally, another thing that we've explored under the AAM umbrella is UAS, small package delivery. We see that with things like wing drone delivery or Flytrex. Those are use cases that are very important, but aren't really being further explored here in San Diego, as we are looking more at the infrastructure components here at SANDAG. Early deployment examples include the 2024 Paris Olympics. So you'll see Volocopter be headlining some of the 2024 Paris Olympics. What we're looking to do here in the US is take some of the lessons learned from this deployment. This is an early stage deployment of AAM. They are moving people via hotels to venues using these aircraft types all throughout Europe. EASA, the regulator in Europe, is trying to understand how these demos can impact global policy as well as their internal policy. So they're going to start taking all of these lessons learned, deploying them out to other regions so that other regions can start to understand what infrastructure is going to be required, what type of energy requirements are going to be necessary in order to facilitate implementation. We will also be leveraging a lot of those lessons learned via the FAA and LA28. So the FAA is undertaking an initiative called Innovate 2028, and that's complemented by a program up in LA called LA28. These programs are seeking to explore, again, those lessons learned on how do we take all of the infrastructure build-outs so that we can facilitate a greater transportation network to facilitate getting athletes from their villages to their venues for wherever they will be participating for the 2028 Olympics. And so this is a large national push as well. We also see initiatives for advanced air mobility with the administrator that was just selected for the FAA. Michael comes from Supernal, which is an AAM eVTOL original equipment manufacturer. And so they are prioritizing this technology as part of their next generation portfolio. Additionally, we see more local and state jurisdictions trying to look at adoption. We've seen this with Ohio DOT under Drive Ohio with their UAS center. We also see a lot of initiatives in New York. This is the state of New York is actually investing quite a bit in advanced air mobility. They're looking at not just the vehicles and the infrastructure, but also how do they deploy air corridors and how are they ensuring that they're having interoperability with their other federal partners that operate across their borders. So we're taking a lot of lessons learned as well because they have binational regions that they are leveraging and giving us a lot of data on as well. And so here are a few early examples. And one of that I'm super proud of is San Diego IPP. So this goes back to the drone use case. We have experienced quite a bit of aerospace achievement here in San Diego. If you're familiar with the region, you know that we have quite a name in the aerospace industry. So San Diego undertook the UAS integration pilot program, the city of San Diego. They partnered with programs like National City to deploy aerostats, radar testing with DARPA several years ago. Also, the City of Chula Vista, the Jordan's First Responder Program was under the San Diego Integration Pilot Program. So there is a precedent here in San Diego that we take on these types of exploratory programs to really understand what the requirements are going to be. And if these are solutions that are going to start providing maybe potential solutioning for our specific problems, right? Freight movement, congestion, et cetera. Okay, so why are we undertaking this here at SANDAG? So you can see that there's so many parts of this, and I get overwhelmed talking about it because there's so many different components of AAM that we need to be considering. What's important here at SANDAG is the infrastructure, of course. That's what's within our purview. That's what we understand. And we know we need to be creating a support structure today that will enable the technology for tomorrow. So that means identifying where we exist today, our existing conditions, and what we're going to need to start filling in for tomorrow. Does that mean connectivity via fiber? Does that mean more energy and resiliency capabilities in order to power these vehicles and power the infrastructure that's going to be required for charging? And so those are the types of things we're addressing here at SANDAG under this project. Alongside that, we're trying to understand what land use permitting ordinances are going to be necessary to help facilitate our jurisdictions being able to take that first step in their planning initiatives. We are also trying to work, or we are working alongside our partners at the San Diego Regional County Airport Authority to understand airspace considerations. What does that look like? Who technically owns that within the region, right? We have a lot of operators of the airspace. And so we are the regional coordinator of the region. So we have to really understand, you know, between our federal partners, between our civilian aircraft operators, while SANDAG is not within our purview to understand what each of those will own, we want to make sure we're setting them up for success by creating the right relationships, by getting the right technology into their hands, and by making sure they have the tools that they're going to need to be successful in that realm of integration. And then, of course, in order to understand our infrastructure concerns, we have to work with our original equipment manufacturers, we have to work with our service providers to understand exactly what needs to be undertaken today. Every jurisdiction is going to have different requirements. They're going to be in a different space in terms of risk tolerance. And so for us to really have and understand what individual components need to be owned by whom, we're taking this early phase to kind of start divvying out these responsibilities and to be able to start saying, hey, here's the stepping stone for each jurisdiction to take while you start to contemplate this. I think we've all seen the catastrophic outcomes of things like bike shares or scooters, where the infrastructure did not exist to support the technology. It was rolled out with such things. And so policy had to come quite a bit behind. And now we are all kind of at a loss as to how to go back and address, right, reintegrating scooters, et cetera. We have the opportunity with this technology to address the infrastructure needs prior to it coming to market. So we know that these vehicles are going to take many years to come through the FAA certification process. The last vehicle that went through an entire FAA certification process took about a decade. And so we recognize that there's time for us to prepare. Let's make sure we're preparing appropriately. So putting some of this stuff together and how we're envisioning it, we don't envision advanced air mobility to be a standalone concept. We envision this to be part of a more holistic transportation model, right? So our vertiport is really just a mobility hub with an air component, right? So we're actually looking at our last mile being able to be, if you do want to do a bike share, if you have a car share, if you have transit, right? These are all opportunities where we could have our last mile connecting to our middle mile opportunity via an aircraft. And so we could leverage these early stages at existing aviation assets. So we are working alongside the city of San Diego as they have a few aviation assets that are looking to undergo redevelopment right now. And we're saying, hey, if we were to develop a use case, what would this look like? What would zoning need to look like? What would the ordinances need to look like? What would the times and hours of operations look like? And also, how do we ensure that we're getting this out to the right people? So how are we making sure that if we are going to leverage one of these concepts, how do we make sure that these concepts are being appropriately messaged out to our stakeholders, out to our residents and constituents, so that people understand that this is actually just optimizing the mobility hub and not something to be afraid of, because it is a novel technology. And so again, this is early stage in terms of what SANDAG is envisioning for our programming. It's just to understand an equitable, sustainable, and resilient, creating this network where we truly can move people, services, and goods safely and expeditiously. And so it's just leveraging this technology to enhance what we already have created or what we're going to create in our next generation transportation system. Some of what we're looking to delineate through different working groups under this project are operational efficiency, safety and security, of course, infrastructure demand, the capacity and technological scalability, environmental sustainability and economic viability, because of course we understand that this is a great technology. It's also very expensive. Who is responsible for paying for it? How do we deliver on this? Is this going to be something that we have to explore under a public-private partnership model? Because we don't know what the revenue is going to look like in terms of cost share, right? So we do know that there's a lot of scalability and a lot of predictions on how large this market is going to grow to be. Unfortunately, we just don't understand quite yet who that money is going to go to, right? We would love to come to understand that. And equity, public benefit, and engagement. All of these lines that we are discussing, this is not being undertaken unilaterally in SANDAG. We are working alongside, again, our industry partners, our OEMs, our service providers to tackle each of these nuanced working groups to try to understand exactly what's going to need via each phase of this project. And so I just want to give kind of a high level, and you can jump in again and ask as many questions as you'd like, but on the actual project that we're undertaking here, because there's so much that happens within this industry, it both advances rapidly and not so much at all. It's very much a hurry up and wait. So the regulatory realm does not advance as quickly, of course, as the technology. And so a ton of people do a lot of academic reporting. What we're trying to do is continually update all of our repertoire. As new stuff comes on the pipeline, how do we make sure that our internal understanding of advanced air mobility, we're getting our latest lessons learned? What we've learned to do is put all of these industry reports and white papers and every other thing that comes down the pipeline into this dashboard where we can pull specialized reports to really understand exactly what we're trying to look at. We have made sure that these are broken down by focus area. So in community engagement, environmental sustainability, you can see them up on the screen. But each of these has kind of a different space that we archive each of our programs to kind of understand via, or which lesson we're looking to learn via reports under each of these categories. Our AAM collaborative, some of this is what the objectives that we've put forth in terms of trying to understand. These are just kind of the guidelines, right? If we're going to work together, here's what we're looking to accomplish alongside one another. And so all of our OEMs that have come to the table, all of our service providers that have come to the table, they've done so. They do so, number one, at their own cost, but they also are bringing a plethora of knowledge that we don't have, and they're doing so in a way that is objective as possible so that we can get the best information that we can to have as interoperable of a transportation network as possible. Again, these are just a few things that fall under each work stream. So you can see that we've put quite a bit of time and effort into understanding each kind of individualized work stream and the categories that we will need to address within them. Public outreach and education strategy. We are developing this out to try to understand how each stakeholder will be engaged, when they will be engaged, and then alongside this, trying to understand how we will do public outreach and engagement, right? This is a very nuanced technology. We need to make sure that our messaging is approachable, clear to understand, not scary, because the technology is not scary. But again, this is novel, and we understand that people will be a little bit, they will have some trepidations around that. We also want to make sure that we are being as thoughtful as possible about how we engage with everyone so that as the strategy develops, we have a leg to stand on, right? We can't take a strategy that doesn't exist and try to put it forward. So we have to make sure we have something very strong to stand on before we put it forth. We are working with some consulting folks who have done work in Florida. They are taking this concept that they've worked alongside the city of Orlando to do and create these case studies to assess where we are. Again, this is the existing conditions kind of assessment versus what we're looking to establish in terms of land use, in terms of zoning. And so all of these types of things will assess a rural environment and an urban environment and say, hey, for our jurisdictions who are looking to potentially streamline permitting or zoning, here's how we would recommend doing so. And then our regional implementation strategies. So what's currently underway is we are working with our consulting team to develop a smart atlas to try to identify areas of early deployment or early foundational projects that we can, again, begin to establish what we need to build the framework to build upon. So today we will be looking at, again, do we need to extend fiber in order to increase connectivity so that that data exchange for the vehicles is there and exists? Or do we need to be looking at potentially retrofitting gas stations for hydrogen fueling mechanisms if that's what we see as the energy of the future? Again, there are a lot of unknowns within all of this, but if these are the trends, and we want to ensure that we're following them. And so we're working alongside our industry partners and some of our regional conveners to try to understand and ascertain the best way to implement here that is both safe, efficient, and equitable. And that is what I have today. I assume I will have some questions, but I'm looking forward to them.
Thank you. Very insightful presentation. Thank you so much. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Thank you, Chair. I have one public comment on this item, the original draw. Please go ahead.
Is this the fifth element or what? This is so interesting to hear you guys talk about this because the roads are crap. The infrastructure is crap. And you're like trying to move into this technology into the future that's very expensive. We're in a deficit. I don't know where you're going to get money for this. And just to think, like you can't even just fix and keep up with what we already have to make sure that it's, you know, like at least subpar. It is such a joke to see how the conditions of the roads, the storm drains, like, oh my gosh. And then you're trying to get us to fly around. I mean, I don't know. Can we add maybe an amusement park? Like, why don't we bring in some roller coasters as well? I feel like that would be kind of cool. And then I don't know, like maybe bubbles, like a personal bubble that everybody could like float around in. That would be good. Those aren't probably as expensive as this, you know, who wants to be in an electric drone type of thing up in the air? I mean, think about all of the deaths that's going to come from that. Good job, you guys.
And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any committee member comments? Yes.
So I just want to thank Kate and everybody at SANDAG that is working with us. We're happy to be a partner in this effort. I would just point out that as San Diego International Airport, we don't expect to be quote unquote the early adopter. It's a commonly used phrase in this advanced air mobility world. But we, in working with some of the colleagues with the city airports, as well as the county airports, we see a lot of opportunity here. So I just want to point that out from an airport perspective. But as a planner, we are working on this diligently because we think public outreach is going to be critical. It is coming. I know there's a lot of scoffing at this type of transportation, but it is coming. And I think that to avoid, just to reiterate a point that Kate made, to avoid that scooter and the electric bike, we need to be talking about this now. So thank you, Kate. Great presentation. Happy to be a part of it.
I appreciate that, Jana. And on that, I will just say to the end that Jana was saying, we are looking to be a second wave adopter of this technology. Of course, it's kind of the intentional approach that we're taking. Again, we've taken those lessons learned from early adopter jurisdictions, right? They are looking for people to come operate within their corridors. We are looking to make sure that we are prepared for the technology when it comes to market. And so I just want to make sure that I clarify that.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. So people forget sometimes that Caltrans has a division of aeronautics, and we are also researching this, and we have some studies also in general use. But I just didn't hear specifically how you're working with Caltrans on permitting and with our division of aeronautics. So I just want to know what you've reached out for, or if we can help in any way.
I so appreciate you, Roy. Thank you so much. Actually, Caltrans has funded our grant. We work along Caltrans on our PDT, our project development team. So with Brian Miller in District 11. And so they've actually provided quite a bit of support. Brian is a regular participant. And during our collaborative sessions, he also brings some of our, the aviation stakeholder group from Caltrans, as well as any other pertinent stakeholder he thinks might be able to help provide some good context just based on what we may be discussing that week, right? We do a lot of SWOT analyses, SWOT analysis instead of SWOT. We don't like to use the term threat in this arena. We understand that we are working in aviation. We have to be cognizant of that. But suffice it to say, Caltrans has been an incredible support. And I will just say, as these projects become more expensive, more grant opportunities will be welcomed.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, Kate, thanks so much for the presentation. Super exciting stuff. One question, I see that the grant is funded through December of this year. Is that correct?
The grant is actually funded through, I believe, Q2 of next year. We are just looking to deliver the product by the end of this year to ensure that we have some time next year to adjudicate any comments that may come up.
And then essentially what is the sort of, the deliverables under the grant?
Yes, absolutely. So for task 2, the first deliverable, it has already been delivered. It was the market assessment, and I'm happy to provide a copy of that. It's very high level. Again, we are trying to make sure that we're focusing our resourcing in the right areas. So task 4 is our public education and outreach strategy. So that will be coming down the pipeline within the next few months. Tasks 5 and 6 just recently kicked off, but they're kind of the core and the crux of the project, which task 4 is current state of policy versus, again, those kind of recommendations on what local policies and ordinances and permitting may be recommended for the various jurisdictions in terms of trying to streamline in that capacity. And then the task 6 deliverable is the actual regional implementation strategy. So again, we recognize that this is a longer term play, right? But let's start to identify short-term projects we can start implementing today that will lend itself to success for tomorrow. So I think that that's really what we're ultimately looking to achieve via those deliverables.
Okay, thank you. And then I didn't see it in your presentation, but I saw it in the package. You know how you described airspace as an ecosystem?
Yes.
And I did note that you had, the military referenced as well, because we have, 3 military bases in the San Diego metro area, one of which is Naval Base Coronado, which has a huge airspace component. So
Yeah.
I think aviation, for us, making sure that national security is prioritized as well is important. So if we can be a partner to support you in these endeavors and be at the table, that would be great.
We welcome all DoD participation. In fact, this is to me the more collaboration, the ultimately the easier my job is going to be, right? It is hard to sell something that is so kind of theoretical and people cannot see, they can't touch it, they can't feel it, they can't hear it. And so for us, the more folks we have involved who want to be champions of this technology, that's welcomed for us. And so having DoD on board, and we've engaged with them, we do have some partners. Unfortunately, because of turnover, it just becomes a little difficult to continually engage. But you are always welcome to come because I would love the perspective. It's critically important. And as one of our critical stakeholders, you could also make or break the implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? No. Thank you so much for the presentation and all the fantastic work. Very forward-looking. Thank you.
Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
So this was an informational item only. Moving on to item number 5. We will now hear an update from SANDAG's Grant Program Manager, Jenny Russo, and Senior Regional Planner, Stacy Cooper, on Smart Growth Incentive Program, the Cycle 6 Call for Projects.
Good morning. So as the chair mentioned, my name's Jenny Russo. I'm a grants program manager here at SANDAG. So I oversee all of our competitive grant programs that we have.
I'm joined today by my colleague, Stacy Cooper. She's a senior regional planner in our Sustainable Communities team, and we're here to talk to you about one of our mostly oversubscribed programs, the Smart Growth Incentive Program, and our upcoming call for projects. This will be our 6th cycle. So just to give you kind of a preview about what we're going to cover today, first we're going to give you sort of a general overview of what the program is, what it's funded to date, types of projects. Stacy's going to go through some proposed updates that we're interested in making to the program and how we will be implementing it. Following that, we'll go into the evaluation criteria that's used to select projects, and then we'll turn things back to all of you for a discussion. Ultimately, we're looking for input today to inform the next call for projects. So anything that you see in the written materials that we talk about today that you're looking for, additional input, or if you have feedback for us, we're happy to take all of that today. So I want to start with an overview of what the program is. Smart Growth Incentive Program, or we call it SGIP. It's one of our competitive grant programs, and it's authorized by the Transnet Extension Ordinance. So it's Transnet funded only. The program provides funding for the region's 18 cities and the county exclusively. And this is for transportation-related infrastructure and planning projects that help catalyze compact mixed-use development that's focused near public transit, jobs, services, and public facilities. The intent of the program is to maximize the use of our existing infrastructure, to preserve our open space, natural resources, and increase housing and transportation choice in the region. So we've had 5 prior cycles of the program, beginning with the first cycle in 2009, and the most recent cycle, the cycle 5, was completed about 2 years ago. The amount of funding that we've distributed through each of these cycles is shown here on the table on the left. And on the pie chart on the right, you'll see that the majority of the funding, or about $47 million, has gone to capital projects. That seems to be the area of greatest need. Obviously, we want to see projects get implemented. And we've also distributed an additional about $12.5 million to planning projects. So we've had more than 70 projects completed throughout the region. It's also able to leverage another $47 million in other funding, which represents a total investment of about $100 million to our region, which is a nod to the intent of Transnet to bring in additional funding. So capital projects that we've funded through the program are shown on this slide. So enhanced downtown streetscapes, city plaza gathering, beautification projects. We're definitely seeing a large uptick in projects that do safer street design, Vision Zero, those types of infrastructure improvements for pedestrian and bike facilities. And on the planning side, we've also funded projects like climate action plans, TOD studies, specific plan updates, things like that. So really broad range of projects that the program can fund. And there's some pictures here shown of projects that were completed in the last several years or so to give you some visuals. So I'll let Stacy turn it over and talk about updates.
Thanks, Jenny. This is my first time at the Mobility Working Group, so I'm happy to be here. Okay, so we have up to $35 million available through Transnet, and we want the jurisdictions to pursue funding for projects that they're going to be able to implement. So we want to gauge demand today, provide some of the feedback that we heard from the local jurisdictions, and at a brainstorming session that we held back in November. So we heard from staff members that they have concerns about staff capacity, being able to apply for grant funding. Sorry, I didn't know that was it's okay. Being able to apply for grant funding and also being able to implement the projects. Some repeated project priorities that we heard about include streetscape improvements, traffic calming projects, additional staff to support projects, pedestrian and bike improvements, and a number of planning studies regarding the acceleration of housing development. As we mentioned, some of the barriers that we heard about are staff capacity, limited staff, grant administration, grant writing, and it's a complicated application process. So, and the schedules of the different funding as well. Some suggestions and opportunities for how SANDAG can support the local jurisdictions include technical assistance in meeting grant requirements, grant writing resources to include understanding project costs, a streamlined application, one-on-one consultations. And then, oops, sorry. Lastly, some of the things we heard on the application process and development of the call for projects is allowing multiple applications from a single jurisdiction, reviewing past successful grant applications, realistic timelines to execute projects successfully, and a better understanding of how SCIP can fund a larger portion of a project. So to provide greater flexibility and fewer restrictions in this cycle, we're proposing to remove the geographic constraints, but the project must still advance multimodal transportation, better integrate transportation and land use, demonstrate meaningful reductions to vehicles miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions, advance equity, and align with the 2021 Regional Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy. So we have 3 categories that we'll be doing. The normal ones we have are the planning and capital. And then this time as a mitigation measure from the 2021 regional plan, climate action planning is also going to be one of the categories. And then this shows the breakdown of the different types of funding that we are proposing. So it'll be 7 million for planning, 25 for capital, and 3 million for climate action. And on the right-hand side in the chart, you can see the maximum and minimums and the performance period for each one of those. So our anticipated timeline, as we mentioned, we had our kickoff event with the local jurisdictions in November of 2023. This month, we're bringing the scoring criteria to you guys, to the Sustainable Communities Working Group, and also to the Social Equity Working Group. From July to November, we'll be bringing the call for projects to ITALK, Transportation Committee, Regional Planning Committee, and the Board of Directors. We'll be releasing the call for projects probably in November, giving you guys until February to submit your applications. The funding recommendations will be going back to the committees and the board in May through July of 2025. In October, we'll be putting out the notice to proceed, and then you'll have until 2028 or 2029 to complete your project, depending on the type. I will pass it back to Jenny to talk about the evaluation criteria.
All right, so as Stacy mentioned, the updates that we've made to the evaluation criteria are to better align it with the goals of the program and also to get it back into updating what was changed through the 2021 regional plan and the environmental impact report. So the 2 tables on this slide, these are the proposed criteria for our planning and our capital projects. You'll notice that the criteria is pretty similar between the 2. There's a little bit of changes in weight just so that they have the same amount of points given. The main distinction is that on the capital side, that criteria 4A, that major milestone completion, that criteria is there so we can assess where projects are, in terms of constructability, if they completed the planning process, are they environmentally clear, that sort of thing. Other than that, they're largely the same criteria in both categories. For climate action planning, so this category is intended to fund either new caps. So if your jurisdiction doesn't have a climate action plan, that is a requirement to receive Smart Growth Incentive Program funds. So you could apply for grant funding to be able to create a climate action plan, or if your jurisdiction has one, which many of the jurisdictions do, you can also apply for funding to do updates to your plan. So this criteria is kind of covering both of those types of areas. Largely, the criteria 3, 4, and 5 are the same as what you saw on the capital and planning side. So the only change over on this one is the addition of the criteria 1 and 2, which is coming out of the EIR from the 2021 regional plan and what it's requiring us to measure projects against. So Board Policy 33, you may have noticed that in all 3 criteria, there is a section for Board Policy 33, and it mentions 25% of the points. So for those of you that aren't familiar, our board adopted Board Policy 33 a number of years ago to integrate housing into our program. So we are required to implement Policy 33 with the Smart Growth Incentive Program, and the policy outlines this requirement for the 25% of the points overall to be driven through these criteria. It's split into 2 parts. First is pro-housing policies, and there's a number of sub-criteria on here that are shown in bullets where your jurisdiction can receive points. And then the other sub-criteria is housing equity or affirmatively furthering fair housing. So largely most jurisdictions receive, substantially the most points that are available in here. So it really doesn't have a huge impact on the overall scoring, but we do have it included because it's required by board policy. Every 3 years, the Transit Extension Ordinance requires that the program undergo a performance audit. Many of you are familiar with this. We just completed the most recent performance audit earlier this year. So it looks at how all of the transit dollars are spent through our grant programs as well as through your formula funding that you receive through it. So some of the recommendations that are coming out of that audit are shown in this slide. Most of these are administrative changes that you really won't see or feel. There'll be things that my staff is going to be implementing. So, making sure we've got really good documentation, record keeping, those sorts of things, just enhancing that type of documentation. But the two that I want to point out, the first two boxes there shown on the top, are integration of performance measures. So we did have performance measures in our last cycle, cycle 5, which were planning projects. Because we didn't have capital dollars available in that program, most of you aren't used to seeing performance measures. So that will be something new that we will add. We imagine it'll probably mirror along the lines of what we did recently with our housing program. We know that there's a lot of different types of projects, so it would probably be a menu of different performance measures. And as they apply to your relevant projects, that's what you would be held to. Additionally is the detailed scopes of work. So those of you who've had a grant in the past may have noticed we have a combined scope schedule budget. It's very high level. It doesn't really have a whole lot of detail about what the deliverables are, what the intended scope is. So Transnet, our independent taxpayer oversight committee, is looking for more detail there, just to kind of make sure that we all understand what was the grant funding intended for and was that project actually delivered, and have all of those things detailed a little bit better. So those are the two major substantive changes that are coming out of the audit, but there's a couple of other things that I highlighted here just so that you're aware of what those are. And then lastly, last year, as we took some of our other funding programs through the Transportation Committee and the board for funding recommendations, they started to ask some really good questions about how does the process work. So we did a deep dive into our programs. We did some benchmarking analyses across the nation, looking at different federal and state grant programs about how grant funding is distributed, what the process looks like. And so coming out of that, there were a number of recommendations from the Transportation Committee that they asked us to implement across the board on all of our programs. So the four main ones are shown up here on the slide. So the first 2 or 3 really are to help all of you as an applicant. So we'll have a lot more detail in our scoring rubric. So it'll actually have tables that will show you in each of the criteria. How do you earn specific amount of points? How do you get 5 points, 6 points, 7 points, that sort of thing? So you can really understand as you're building an application kind of what the difference is. What's the granular data that an evaluator is looking for that'll help you build an application, or at least know maybe there's something that's outside of your control with the way your project is, but you'll understand exactly going into it. This is the amount of points that I'll be able to receive. The middle two, so we have mandatory training with all of our evaluators as they come on board so they understand the scoring rubric, what they're expected to do. We'll also be holding consensus meetings with them so that once their scores come in, we sit them down in a room and say, looking across the scores and see if there's any difference. Is somebody really an outlier on the scores or, in one way or another, and trying to get consensus on those. What that will do is we're moving away from ranks. If some of you remember in the past, we used to rank our project applications for funding. We know it's really confusing for folks. So we're hoping by changing the first 2 things, we can start using an average score. So we'll average the scores across all the evaluators, which will give you something a little bit more tangible that you're used to seeing on other programs. And that will be determined of how we fund funding or how we distribute the funding in order. And then lastly, we know that it's really hard when you're out competing for funding, and sometimes there's factors that are outside of your control. So TC has asked us to look into doing geographic funding distribution. So what we've done done on the housing program, and we're talking about doing it on some of the other ones, is that we would fund projects in order of that average score, but the first project for each jurisdiction would receive funding first, so that we're kind of spreading it around the region. And then we'd go back down through that list if we had additional funding, so that you have better opportunity to receive funding instead of it being totally driven by score. As Stacy mentioned, you can submit multiple applications for the program. So this also helps not have a cluster of projects from one jurisdiction or one applicant that receive a large amount of funding. So that was really important to our TC to help make sure that that funding is spread throughout the region as much as we can. So that concludes our presentation. I'll turn it back over to the chair and start the discussion. And we're really grateful to be here and appreciate any feedback you may have for us.
Thank you. Very much appreciate that. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Thank you, Chair. We do have one member of the public, the original draw. You can go ahead.
Forgot to mention teleportation last time. I think that's something that we should really be looking into as well. I mean, I don't think that's any greenhouse gases or anything like that, but you know, it's as far as what you're doing, and you're talking about reducing VMT and GHGs and like putting in all these complete streets, like it's just to impede people's movement and get them out of their car, which is sad, because if you understood what you were really pushing with that, you wouldn't be doing it, because you're backing your own self into a corner. And, you know, there's no increase of housing. I mean, just because people are trying to save the planet, there is no housing, because there's so many, you know, guidelines and regulations and policies that people have to follow in order to just provide what needs to be provided. And that's what is sad, is that, you know, in your pursuit to save the planet, people are suffering, the infrastructure is suffering, things aren't being provided in a manner that they could be, especially when you have limited staff, and that's a barrier to even you being able to do this kind of work.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from members of the committee? Yes.
Okay, hey, Jenny. Thank you so much, both of you, for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. Looking at the packet, just in terms of the sort of checklist or the scorecard, if you will, I noticed that the Climate Action Plan one didn't include the same sort of equity subcategory item, the degree to which the project furthers equity and benefits disadvantaged communities. And I wondered why that wouldn't also be included under the Climate Action Plan scoring card. And then I guess the other sort of question that I had was also the Climate Action Plan category, the new Climate Action Plan category seems like a great approach, but knowing that a lot of the jurisdictions in the region already have a Climate Action Plan, does this category also have the ability to capture climate mitigation plan, climate adaptation plan, sea level rise, you know, sort of planning, or is it just focused on caps? Because I think that'd be a kind of a missed opportunity if it didn't have other considerations, I think, climate change related. And that's the extent of the comments now. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Manganiello.
Thanks for the presentation, Steve Manganello, National City. I did have an item for SANDAG staff to consider, and I think it's related to the maximum for capital projects. I think going back to cycle one, it was probably about $2 million. I noticed you bumped it up to $3 million. What I'd like to consider is for SANDAG staff to move it up to $5 million. Reason being, if you just look at, you know, the cost of construction, and then, you know, the stormwater regulations. So if you're trying to do a streetscape project today, you're probably looking at $1 million per block. And I know that is a common project that people look to take advantage of this program for, to help spur smart growth development. That really only allows you to do a handful of blocks, which really isn't that impactful. So I would just put it on SANDAG to consider bumping up the max to $5 million. I think that would help quite a bit. Thanks.
Thank you. Additional comments, questions? Thank you so much. I really appreciate the draft evaluation criteria. I think it is very balanced, and I think it's looking at a lot of our municipalities' interest in making sure that we have smart growth. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So this was a discussion item only. Moving on to item number 6, which Keith Greer, our Deputy Director of Environmental Compliance and Climate, and Jacob Armstrong from the County of San Diego and San Diego Regional VMT Mitigation Program.
I guess. Good morning. Just giving you a short verbal report on a project that has just started. We've just kicked off between partnership between SANDAG and the County of San Diego. So as the chair mentioned already, my name is Keith Greer. I'm the Deputy Planning Director, and I'm in charge of all of our environmental compliance programs here and climate at SANDAG. I'm joined by Jacob Armstrong. He's a chief at the County of San Diego in charge of in the planning department over there. And our consultant here, Stephen Cook, who's on intersecting metrics, and he's been doing a lot of our work, including working on SANDAG's regional plan for transportation-related impacts. So we have an exciting program. It's actually exciting to me. It's also a little scary. So we have an item that we want to bring to you. We just kicked off a program. You'll be seeing this many times over the next couple of years as it develops and matures and we start developing some products. But I need to give you a little background first. So under the California Environmental Quality Act, we have to analyze impacts for all kinds of development, whether it's land development, transportation, anything. And in our world, in the environmental planning world, we look for where that development has a significant impact, and if that significant impact can be reduced to below a significant impact by mitigation. So you guys have all heard about mitigation in the past. If you can't provide mitigation to reduce that, then you have to do an EIR. EIRs are very expensive. They're very timely. And so historically, one of those many areas we look at has been the transportation system. And in the transportation system, we have used a metric called level of service, which is a measure of auto delay. So it's getting towards congestion on streets. And that's been used for, I don't know, 30, 40 years by the practice, and it was a state of art. It's changed now. So what's changed? On July 1st of 2020, SB 743 went into effect, and you probably know this better by the VMT mitigation policy or VMT policy. And what it said is that auto delay or congestion can no longer be considered an impact under CEQA. It's changed or shifted it now, and they recommended to use vehicle miles traveled as that new metric. So historically, that auto delay, that level of service is gone, replaced by vehicle miles traveled. So if a development project has a lot of VMT that's created, you have to find mitigation for that vehicle miles traveled to reduce the project below level of significance and to avoid doing an EIR. Your alternative is to do an EIR and disclose how much VMT there is and that it can't be mitigated. So in implementation over the last 4 years, we've seen that suburban projects and rural projects and small development projects are having a very difficult time finding feasible mitigation for VMT. It's no longer just adding a street lane or adding improvements around the project. Now it's looking regional, something more big picture. In addition, small jurisdictions are having infrequent opportunities to provide mitigation in their cities. So that leads to a conundrum of having these rural and suburban developments forced to do an EIR and small developments having to force to do an EIR for this VMT issue. So what has SANDAG done? So SANDAG and the county have been talking about this for the last couple of years, and we approached Caltrans and received a strategic partnership grant. So this grant will be going over the next couple of years to look at the VMT issue and see if we can come up with a program that would help the region bridge the issue between the impacts of VMT and where those occur and mitigation in areas that could provide multimodal infrastructure where most appropriate. It's a very big, daunting area for us because it crosses jurisdictions. It also is exciting. It's something that UC Berkeley has talked about in white papers, and we're trying to actually see if it's implementable down here in San Diego. So what you'll be seeing is products coming out of this report and over the next couple of years. And I kind of want to give you a highlight as we just started. There's lots of questions, not a lot of answers right now. But I wanted to have Stephen Cook go over what the schedule is and when you'll be seeing certain things.
Thank you. The project kicked off in April of this year. We had our first TAC meeting, which many of the members of this committee are on that TAC, so hopefully everybody is informed of that. We had that last week, I believe. And so we're moving into now kind of the option stage of the of the project. So we want to look at kind of a bunch of different options on how a regional program could be put in place, whether it's a true regional program where it's housed by a regional body and everybody moves into it, or working to develop guidelines and other tools in which local jurisdictions can implement on their own, providing kind of that background, and also opening up the avenues of communication between jurisdictions, as Keith mentioned, so that jurisdictions that may not have enough VMT reducing facilities within their jurisdiction to mitigate these impacts can utilize jurisdictions that have excess VMT reducing facilities. So we're really trying to open up those communications and allowing the different jurisdictions to share the facilities and the mitigation. So that we'll start to look at options in October of 2024. We hope to have the final product done in May 2025 and move to approval in December of 2025. The program needs to be approved by, I believe, both the SANDAG board and the county board, because that's who the grant's through. But we'd work with any other local jurisdictions that need help putting it through their own local processes and being adopted. This is a 2-year grant, so everything needs to be wrapped up by June 30th, 2026. So we kind of built in a 6-month window. Just things don't always go right, and we can also have a 6-month window to help other jurisdictions implement the program as well.
So you'll be seeing products coming out of this process at various times along the way. We want to use this body as a vetting process, get your input on the various policies, proposals, ideas that are coming out. And ultimately, we go through our transportation committee and onto the board eventually as the grant kind of matures and finishes up. So this is just, again, the very first stages. I'm hoping that some of you are on the TAC already. And if not, then you'll be hearing about it through this mobility working group. So that concludes our report, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Thank you, Chair. We do. The original draw, you can go ahead.
You guys looking ready, getting ready and looking forward to being enslaved? Because that's what this is. That is, you guys seem like really intelligent people, and I don't think you understand what's happening around you and like what the Agenda 21 is, and it's coming down from the United Nations, who we fund, which is ridiculous. But I mean, if you really understood, I don't think you would be doing any of these things that you're doing. But so that's why, I mean, you're actually enslaving yourselves, because eventually there's going to be 15-minute cities like there already are in other places. You're not even going to be able to leave to go see your family if you want. They're going to make you pay a tax, right? And it's like, there's all of these things that will never do anything to mitigate what you claim it will. And it's all about getting us out of our cars. That's what SANDAG talks about all the time. It's not about getting in an electric vehicle or any of this. We need to get people out of their cars and ride and do public transit, all of this stuff. So you're never going to mitigate what you want to, because it's still going to exist when you try and do that. And you're all going to back yourself into a corner.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any working group member comments? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Keith. Fantastic presentation. Appreciate it. I have a question, and I don't anticipate a clear answer if you don't have it. Certainly would like to hear you and Steve's comment. And that is, some of the jurisdictions have recently revised their circulation elements. We actually have converted into VMT, and we actually created our own transportation impact fees, where we collect from various development projects. How do you come in terms with those agencies who have already, and the fact that developers may end up paying twice? Is that something that you guys will consider?
Yeah, it's not to eliminate this program doesn't eliminate anything that jurisdictions have. So it's another opportunity. So the jurisdiction has it all figured out. Wonderful. That's great. And they can use that for their own SQL analysis. But if they don't have it figured out, we want to create a new opportunity at a regional level that they can contribute and use as accordingly as you see fit. And remember, all SQL is done by the jurisdictions, not by SANDAG. So it doesn't have to go through SANDAG. It's through the jurisdictions and creating opportunities that don't exist right now.
And just to add on, Mo, the way your guys' is basically general plan is structured, along with the traffic impact fee program, that covers all the mitigation within Solana Beach that would be needed. So you guys may not need to participate in this program. It's really just for projects that can't mitigate at the local level. This is like another layer of mitigation that could be provided if the implementing jurisdiction wants to.
And if I may, so in reality, when we encounter a significant project that potentially can impact the regional facilities, that's where jurisdictions with a TIF program potentially can participate.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes.
Maybe it's too much in the weeds, but I know that you'll probably have specific projects that as a mitigation bank, as it were, and then who would be administrating those projects if different jurisdictions would be participating?
So I know you want to jump in on that because your ideas, but the concepts, yes, we will be discussing that, but we don't have a clear idea right now how that looks. So I envision there'll be kind of like an RTIP list, right? You're having a list of projects, and then we'll have to figure out a mechanism for having that happen. And I know this guy over here has a lot of great ideas, and some of the TAC members are helping flesh those ideas out, but we're not there yet.
That was me, my answer.
Any additional comments or questions? Yes.
So Stephen, so what you working on for us or worked on with the VMT iOS guideline, would this be replacing that? Or two is, would this only be for non-mitigatable corridor like coast highway where there's no way to build extra lanes or add bike lane? This is like addition to the VMT iOS guideline that you have.
Exactly. So this wouldn't change the level of service guidelines or the VMT guidelines that you guys have. It would more be supplemental to it. So if a project has a VMT related impact that they can't mitigate on site through, TDM measures or by building additional facilities within the city of Oceanside, they would be able to use this program to supplement the additional, basically reductions in VMT and regional VMT and take credit for that. So it provides them that level of, it would provide them that kind of additional level of mitigation, which they could then potentially avoid doing in EIR.
Steve Manganell, National City. I'm actually excited about this endeavor because I think the more flexibility we can provide developers to not have to go down the route of an EIR, the better. I'm just curious, based on the preliminary work you've done, or and your knowledge of CEQA as it relates to VMT requirements, do you foresee any issues with having projects cleared on a regional basis like this?
So again, it's not going to be necessarily cleared regionally. It's going to be identifying what the opportunities for mitigation are. So I'll give you an example in a different part of the world that I work on. So in the biological world, you might have an impact in San Marcos, and you might mitigate in the county of San Diego. And that's perfectly fine under CEQA, as long as you made the connection for what you're impacting is what's being mitigated and the offset is there. So in the transportation world, you may have an impact in San Marcos and mitigate in San Marcos, and that's fine. Or you might not have an opportunity in San Marcos, and maybe there's an opportunity on a regional basis. And that's what this program is designed to do, is say, let's create this flexibility, let's create this option on a regional basis.
And just to add to that, we do have Ted Lamb on the team who is with the Berkeley Law Institute. He was the primary author on the 2 white papers on the subject. And one of the main reasons why we brought him in is to make sure that what we develop as a program can be actually implementable and not have, I think, some of the issues you're talking about, like with timing and the actual implementation of it. And would that count as actual mitigation? Would it be built within a reasonable time frame of the impact occurring? So those are things that we're looking at. I don't have an answer for that now because that's what, but it is something we're going to look at as part of the process.
Thank you. Additional questions, comments? No. Thank you all so much for the very detailed presentation. Very much appreciated. We want to be respectful of everybody's time. We do have one more item, item number 7, transit fare discount study. It is a very robust presentation, so we will be moving it on to the July 11th working group meeting. So with that said, we have our next mobility working group meeting scheduled for Thursday, July 11th, 2024. We are adjourning at 11:14. Thank you.